Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, no matter what time of day it is when you're joining us. I want you to know it's an honor, it's a privilege, and it's a pleasure for you to tune us in here at the CVC Home Service Success Network. You know, our mission is to give you ideas, give you processes, to share concepts. And one of the things we love to do is reach out and find someone that we can bring on to contribute to this. So the gentleman that's our guest today, I stumbled across him a while back because he's got a really unique podcast that caught my attention big because it had the word waste in it. And the title of that is Waste No Day. Waste No Day. And as I thought about this, I said, man, this is a process that if you can get up every morning and make a decision and have the mindset that you're not going to waste a day and you're going to make it a positive experience for yourself and everybody you meet, just look where you can go in life. So anyway, our guest today, who we're going to be interviewing, having a discussion with, is a gentleman by the name of Brian Burton. He's a general manager of a Ben Franklin plumbing operation in Phoenix, Arizona, but he actually started up in Pennsylvania. So Brian, let's start off. Why don't you share with folks a little bit about yourself and what your mission, what your goal is in broadcasting and sharing your thoughts like we're going to do today?
Yeah, so I'm a general manager at Ben Franklin in Phoenix. Like you said, before I got here, I was vice president of sales for a 1 hour Ben Franklin and Mr. Sparky in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, in the just short of a decade, I guess, that I was on the leadership team there. We went from 6 million total revenue to 34, and I kind of climbed the ladder up there from a plumber in a truck to a plumbing operations manager to electrical operations manager to vice president of sales over the three, so I could focus on what I do, which is revenue production, technician development, and then I had operations managers who reported to me. So Matt Buckwalter is the owner of that operation there, and he's very good at building teams. He's also probably even better at recognizing skill sets, and then, you know, in my case, taking the operations from me, which I beat my head against the wall to stay on task with things, and then putting me over the revenue production, which is really where my gifts are.
Gotcha.
So what I like to do with Waste No Day, we started the show in like January of 2021. And it was a result of a lot of our technicians were coming to us. This was the second time we kind of locked the techs out of the building and said, we don't want to congregate. Because if you remember at that time, if somebody got sick, well, you know, 5 people could be staying home for 5 days until the test cleared. And so we just were playing it safe, didn't want to get the CSRs sick. So we kept the techs out of the building, and the complaints were, we're missing the morning meetings, we're missing each other, we're missing the camaraderie that's built with our team. So Nate Minnick and I started the Waste No Day podcast really as a way to train our own technicians. So we would bring one tech in, do an interview style, and then do some like presentation training or whatever we wanted to talk about. Well, it didn't take very long for us to start getting contacted from people all over the state, then all over the country, and then smash cut to probably less than a year later, several countries. And I think the last time I looked, we're getting downloaded in over 100 countries. And the message is pretty simple. The Waste No Day thing is, our goal for the podcast, and every time we get a guest on and every time we're chatting before the episode starts, or when I tell Nate who the guest is going to be, he asked me the same question. And this week's episode was the founder of UGG Boots, right? This guy took just a little idea and I think they did just shy of $3 billion in revenue last year. And the first question Nate asks me is, he says, I love it. I love that we can get these guests on. Thank you for doing this. Let me ask you the question. The question is, how does this help the technician or the salesperson on his or her way to a job right now? Because what we say on that show is, you know, Jerry Eisenhower recorded an episode with us last night that will be airing here in a few weeks. And the first thing we say is, welcome Jerry Eisenhower to your passenger seat. because the way we looked at this show is, I was riding around in the early 2000s trying to get more communication training. So I was playing cassette tapes of Tom Hopkins and Zig Ziglar and Brian Tracy and David Sandler and, all these guys that are alive at least have all been on Waste No Day now, which is just like mind blowing to me. But I'm flipping these tapes over and over and over, and they're mostly like real estate and insurance based. So I'm having to design their presentations into what I do as a plumbing technician, and I always thought, just imagine if we had something like this to listen to that was people who did what we did and how cool that would be. So as soon as we had the capability and started pumping shows out, now we just ask ourselves every day, what did I need to hear when I was in a truck? And one thing I wish I had more of back then was somebody beat me over the head with how much time I'm wasting. And by wasting time, I mean, I'm listening to music. I'm listening to stand-up comedy. I'm listening to, this isn't even a waste of time. This is a literal going the opposite direction of where you want to go to have a productive day. Listening to the news, especially now, but it's never been good. They're all they're trying to do is give you a piece so negative that it triggers you to get upset and listen more and more and more. It becomes addictive. Don't go down that path. Turn the news off, especially now with November rolling around. You know who you're voting for. Go vote for that person. Your mind's not going to be changed by what you hear on the news. So Waste No Day was, or became like, it was going to be like sales training, communication training, presentation training, but I wanted to encompass the whole thing, or what I call the 4 F's, or, I'll draw a wheel on my whiteboard and it's just, it's a pie chart. It's just 4 quadrants. It's the 4 F's are faith, finances, family, and fitness. And then I'll show technicians as I'm training them how, assume it's a wheel. We think as men, especially as men, that we can pour 90% of ourselves into the finance part, into our work, right? And the other 3 will just kind of naturally level themselves out. But what happens when one piece of a tire overinflates? The whole thing, just your car wobbles, your gas mileage tanks, the whole system stops working properly. And there's no difference between that and our lives, right? So we focus on the 4 F's. We get like fitness coaches on, and we get diet experts on, and mostly it's communication and sales and what we do for a living, but we try to sprinkle in every part of it to essentially give the technicians the things that I didn't have growing up or in my early 20s when I started doing the selling version of being in the field. And I grew up without a father in Detroit, so I had no real positive role models to teach me these things. And the majority of plumbers and HVAC techs and electricians, and now we have like 15 different trades listening, but like pool cleaners and pressure washers and roofers and garage door techs and all these other guys, they also grew up without fathers, and many of them don't have a high school diploma, or if they do, that's as far as they went. There's no college. And I'm not saying that to make fun of them. I dropped out, I think, around the 11th grade. I'm not even 100% sure, and never went back and didn't go to college. But I'm just saying that I know who our audience is, or who our avatar is, as Tommy would say. And our audience is that primarily. Maybe 80% of the people that listen to our show are that person. So what we try to do is coach, mentor, even in some ways with the really younger generation coming up, father, as much as we possibly can, and beat them over the head with the things that I wish someone had beat me over the head with as a teenager.
Got you covered. And that's really interesting. And I think this will be interesting for you, since you're dealing with people that are interviewing you. It's evident that Noah is a completely younger generation than what Cheryl and I are. Okay. So,
I couldn't tell. I mean, with you, I could tell, but not Cheryl. I thought they were brother and sister.
Not with Cheryl. Okay. I understand. So, got you covered. You're doing good. So you mentioned this passenger seat. And one of the things that you asked is, who's in your passenger seat? So Brian, who should be in that passenger seat with that technician that's going to help that technician attain that higher level?
So to answer that question, I would ask a question first. I would look that technician in the eye like I do when I'm hiring or in quarterlies or training. And I'll say, Noah, what are your goals? And I don't mean some like I want to be rich. I mean, what are your goals for the end of this week, the end of this month, the end of this year, 5 years? Like, where are you going? What do you want to see? So if this is how we do the F stack thing, like let's just take finance, the finance part of the wheel. I'll say on a scale of 1 to 10 in your finances, where are you? And we won't get into it in depth, but I'll say, are you at a 10? And they'll say, no. Okay, what are you? 6. Well, what does 10 Noah look like in terms of your financial situation? Say the end of this year. And the answer will be, and I'll say, don't tell me you're a billionaire, right? I'm not saying you won't be a billionaire, but driving a plumbing truck at the end of this year, you're not going to be a billionaire. So it's got to be realistic, right? Smart goals. So he'll say, like, here is where my debt is now. This is what it would be at the end of the year. Here's what my weekly or monthly income now. This is what it would be at the end of this year. I'll say, okay, sounds great. Now, who would have to be in your passenger seat, talking in your ear from now till then, for you to be further along? Is Metallica going to do it? Probably not. I love Metallica, don't get me wrong, but James Hetfield ain't going to help you sell more or get out of debt, right? Any music is not where it's at. Is Theo Von going to do it? Probably not. Is there something out there that as you listen to it, you get smarter about your finances? Now, if your main goal is to lower your debt, I might say like Dave Ramsey is your guy, right? If your main goal is to become an investor, and then maybe it's Robert Kiyosaki. But here's the thing that I know for sure. As your income grows, you become happier, more fulfilled, and just kind of better off, right? If we can get your income up while you're doing these other things, then you're on the right track. And who can you put in your passenger seat that's going to help you do that? For me, it's the coaches and trainers that help you become a better communicator. It's also people who really check that fitness box, because over the decade, about 11 years now that I've been leading teams and training other people, the majority of the people that I trained like years ago who still contact me and just shoot me that, hey, thank you so much for what you did for me, are the people that I got in the gym. When I got these people to come and work out with me or go work out on their own or get their fitness on track, all the other ones actually improved as a result. And it really is the only one I've seen improve all the other ones pretty quickly. The financial one helps, but I've also seen where guys would make 3, 4, 5 times their income from one year to the next, literally like that. And they just go deeper in debt. So it's like, oh man, you have to do this again like every 3 years just to keep up with your spending. Like that's terrifying, So that's a whole piece that has to be dealt with. But the fitness one, man, it really seems like if we can get people moving in that direction, everything gets better pretty quickly.
So go ahead. I'm sorry.
So who's in your passenger seat? Right now, Waste No Day encompasses all, but I don't want to just make this a Waste No Day commercial. Although if you're in the home services and you're driving around, it's literally built for you. It's what it's built for. But outside of that, there are different personalities doing these things. So like Andy Elliott to me is someone who's super aggressive and does things a little bit differently, almost on like a humiliation level, but he will get you fit. He will make you sell more. I mean, those guys are closers. We've had him on the show a couple of times and some of his trainers. If you like a little bit softer touch, there's like Jeremy Minor, always with the old like Brian Tracy audio books. He was on our show in December. My favorite books of all time on selling and time management were The Psychology of Selling and Eat That Frog. And they are books that I will go back to from time to time, as well as Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference. probably right now on communication and negotiation, the best book I've ever read. And I try to read them all. So those are good places to start.
Got you covered. So that pastor in the seat, that's that invisible voice. That's that voice you hear in your head. It tries to keep you straight. Did I pretty well read that out of what you just said?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Okay. So let's go to my young colleague here who
Cheryl.
you know, was raised in a Dave Ramsey household. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So you'll know, and his dad and his mom really have bought in, and it's really benefited them in life. So Noah, what would be the first question you would ask Brian this morning that you prepared for him?
For sure. Yeah, my family, big Dave Ramsey fans. My dad credits that guy to pretty much all of our financial success. So
All right.
It's really cool you talked about that.
So Noah doesn't have any credit card debt. Good to hear, buddy.
Noah doesn't have a credit card period yet.
Awesome.
But yeah, so we'll be taking a class with him actually very soon. So excited for that. Anyways, my question a little bit separate. In your bio, you shared your most popular podcast that you did was called 7 Deadly Objections, and you handle some of the toughest objections in home services. Can you go over some of those strategies that you talked about in there?
Yeah. So we, well, here's the deal. I get asked to do this often. Like, dude, do some objections with me. And you know, I train teams occasionally on Zoom and early mornings. Like I'll go to the gym at 4:30, come back at 5:30, train a team a little bit, and then jump in the shower, head to work, and train my team at 7. But inevitably, when I'm talking to a team, and let's say there's just a group of young men and women in here who are going to be running calls today, I'll say, you know, show of hands, who is asking everyone they present a product to buy that product? Every hand goes up. And then I'll reiterate. Every single time you present a product, you ask a either yes or no question, or just a question directed to getting them to buy so that they have the opportunity to purchase it. And then I'll say, if you put your hand up, I'm going to ask you what your question is. Oftentimes, not one hand goes up. Sometimes 1 or 2 out of a group of a dozen to 30 people. And I'll be training the home service freedom group next week on objections. And again, this is what I'm going to start with, and it may very well take the entire hour-and-a-half training session. So there was this survey that I had read, and it was like Harvard or Stanford or something like that. And I don't know, it was probably like 2010 or maybe a little earlier. But in 2013, when I took a team over and became an operations manager, I used to put this survey on the board, and I would just point it out like every few months to the team. And that survey said that almost the Pareto principle, but not quite, that so they tracked 1,000 salespeople in 100 different selling industries across the United States for 1 year. And they found that 85% of the 15% of the people made 80% of the commission. Tracking still? So 150 of the salespeople kept 80% of the total commission paid. And the other 850 salespeople got to keep what's left, right? Which is 20% of the total commission. So they had to, they went nuts trying to figure out what was the biggest delineating factor between the top 15% and the bottom 85%, which was a huge amount of money between those two groups, right? And what they found was the biggest delineating factor was the fact that the top 15% asked every single person they came across to buy. And the bottom 85% almost never did. They built the same options, did beautiful presentations, similar communication styles. They even found, like, in surveys to the clients afterwards, some of the time, the bottom 85% were more likable. Like, they connected better with them than the top 15. But they found that they never asked people to buy. And then in these surveys, if you really like dug into the nitty gritty, you found that when they would ask people why they didn't buy, a very popular answer was, I didn't know how. I had no idea how to buy it, what it would take, how long it was going to take, when it could be installed, or or delivered, or whatever they were selling. And the top 15% just said, do you want one? I can do it for you right now, or we can get it in your mailbox, or whatever it was. So I had read this survey probably right before I came out of a truck. And at that time, I just thought, that's funny. Because in probably 2005 or 2006, I was working for Ken Goodrich in Las Vegas. And I was his number 2 plumber. And I was getting my butt kicked by number 1 month after month after month after, and I could not catch this guy. So I had to sit down with him. And I said, bro, I don't know how to take you, like, what am I missing? And he was a good guy. He would help anybody, And he said, well, here's the problem. He's like, you have all these tools and talents at your disposal. He said, you have $1 million smile, and I don't. People love being around you. You command the room. You're entertaining. And I'm just like, go on. Tell me more. And he says, biggest difference between you and me is I ask every one of my clients to buy, and you don't ask anyone to buy. And I'm like, who are you talking to, bro? I ask everybody to buy. And he goes, okay, well, sell me a water treatment system real quick. Bam, bam, go through the water test, go through my presentation, present my options. Here's 3 options, good, better, best. Boom, push them forward. And he's like, that's nice. Are you going to ask me to buy it? And I was like, oh, he's absolutely right. So I would push him forward, and I would sit back anxiously and nervously waiting for the client to ask me for it. Now, he was pretty assertive, much more so than me, especially at that time. I was very shy. I mean, I grew up, in Southwest Detroit, and a place where I didn't fit in very well anyway, and then learned quickly that the nail that sticks out gets hammered. So it took me a long time to even have conversations with people, especially people with money who I had never really seen before in my life. So I wasn't going to be able to do it as aggressively and kind of forward as he did. He would just go like, here are the 3 options we got for you. Why don't you tell me which one works for you, and I'll get it put in now. Like I'm telling you, when I tell you I had anxiety, I would be at the kitchen table watching him do it on a ride along, and I would get anxiety because he did it. There's no way I was doing that myself. So I had to develop a question that would let me, even my soft self with my delicate sensibilities and shyness crippling me, ask people to buy without feeling like I had to come so outside myself that I wouldn't be able to do it. Small chunks, right? This was beyond me. This was as Jordan Peterson would say, this was a bigger dragon that I could slay with my current weapons. So I had to go in between and find a smaller dragon to fight. So I developed this question, and throughout the years, this question got better and better. And I gave it to salespeople who were great at presenting, but never asked for the business. And we molded and shaped and evolved and became what it is today, which is, well, let's just say it's a water treatment system that I happen to have in the truck. So I would say, here are some options that I thought you and your family would really enjoy, Cheryl. If you were going to pick one today, hypothetically speaking, which one would you lean towards?
For me, you better give me 2 options because I'm not good on 3. But
all right, well, let me just cut that lower one off. There you go. There are 2 options. If you were going to pick one today, hypothetically, which one do you think you'd lean towards, Cheryl?
I would respond with a question, actually, personally. My thing would be how much and when.
Well, it sounds like you're ready to get this done.
But I understand most people, I think they'll choose the middle out of everything.
Sure. That is like, I don't know what it is, probably 80%. Okay. So the middle option, that's actually a very popular option. So here's how I would take it from there. And I'm guessing everybody understood why I did that hypothetical thing. But the reason that I did that was I'm not forcing you to pick something, right? I just want, hypothetically speaking, if you did, which one would you lean towards, right? Because I don't want to push you away just yet. And you pick one. And psychologically, when you make that choice, you've made a choice, right? And oftentimes it would take people 3 to 5 minutes to even pick because they just sit and look. It even better with when it's a couple because they would look together and you get that kind of uncomfortable silence and they look at each other. And man, if the wife took her arm and kind of snaked it around the husband's arm and then looked up at him, I would just be like, yes, so done, right? But they would look and then they would just go, probably the middle one. We'd probably pick the middle one, and you compliment them on their selection and say, hey, that's a great package. That's actually one of our more popular options. And then I would just lean forward. This is so soft. It's so easy, and it doesn't feel aggressive at all. And say, you know, Cheryl, I actually have this one in the truck right now. I can get this thing thrown in, have your water back on, and the place cleaned up, cleaner than it was when I got here, and be out of here by the time you go get the kids from school. And then I just crack a smile, raise my eyebrows, and nod and go, does that sound good? And it's funny because Cheryl started nodding her head even on a video call. But when you do this in person, and I do this, I'll train like a group of people, the entire front row will start nodding with me and smiling while I do it. Everyone that I make eye contact just starts to nod because that's what we do. We're built for that kind of compliance, right? And it's not 100%, but it is a high percentage of people who start nodding with you. And this question, what do you think, Noah? That question, is that something you could go do in the house of a high D that's 30 years older than you right now?
I think that's a very subtle but effective way to handle that. Yes.
Yeah, it's soft, right? But very effective. It is very effective. So from that step 2 is, and this kind of takes me to another story. Wish I was wearing my watch because it would be more effective, but I always leave it in my gym bag, which is, so oftentimes right here, so someone will say, we don't make decisions, snap decisions like that. We'll have to take the weekend and think about it. And you just go, now here's the tough part. Oftentimes salespeople will immediately try to overcome an objection right here. And the reason that I don't train, at least our people, to overcome an objection right here is oftentimes people just need to get a no out. And this is what Chris Voss trained so well in Never Split the Difference. Have you guys read that book?
I have not.
Beautiful. I mean, Chris Voss is one of the most successful hostage negotiators in FBI history. And he wrote this book based on hostage negotiation and communication skills, but it became like the sales Bible all of a sudden. It's like top 5 most purchased books on Amazon for like since it came out in 2016. It's just stayed there. And it ain't going anywhere because it's that good. So he says, and he learned this, are hostage negotiators in high stakes sales?
Say that again.
Would you say hostage negotiators are in the high stakes sales business?
Oh, certainly.
There's no higher stakes than if you and I go vacation in Costa Rica with the family and my daughter gets kidnapped and they send Chris Voss out to get her back, right?
Yeah,
that's high stakes.
Yeah, very high stakes.
And that's what he did for a living for 25 years, I think. So what he said was, in every situation where somebody thinks that there's a sale happening, a client, there is a no building in their stomach from the time they meet you until the time you ask them to buy. So he trains teams, and in his book, he talks a lot about getting little no's out of the way early and often. No's, right? Now, how contrary is this to most sales training? Because most sales training is telling you to nail them down, get that yes, 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 all the way through, right? And right. I did this myself for years. I was always like, every question I ask has to end in them saying yes. Well, he would say, go the other way. So he actually trained us on episode 100 of the Waste No Day podcast the first time he was on. he said, hey, instead of asking questions like, is my truck parked in a good spot? Right? Now, why do we ask that question? We don't want to have to move it halfway through the presentation, right? Is my truck parked in a good spot? Do you mind if may I put my floor protectors on and come on in? Instead of asking questions this way, you would say, is there any issue with where my truck's parked? And what are they going to say?
Mm-hmm.
No, you're good. Would you be opposed to me throwing my floor protectors on and coming in? No, come on in. So all throughout the presentation, you're giving them the opportunity to say no. Now that's one way. Another way is, and that would take a while to catch up to, right? But something you can do immediately is the first time you ask them to buy, the way we talked about, they say no, we'd have to think about it. What I train our techs to do is just stop. Do not start pushing and do not start trying to find an objection to overcome. So, and where this came from was my wife bought me a watch from Zales in the mall in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And it stopped working on me, or it got messed up somehow. And I just kind of threw it in a dresser drawer. Well, she brought it to me at one point and said, hey, this warranty's getting ready to expire. Get it back to Zales or wherever and get it fixed while it's under warranty. I'm like, oh, I got to go to the mall. You got to be kidding me, because I hate the mall. So I've got her younger brother working for me. He was a part runner for us at the time, and he didn't have a vehicle, so he would have to ride home with me. So he and I jumped in the ride when the workday ended, headed over to the Park City Mall in Lancaster. And we just go to the first door we see, right? I don't know where the jewelry store is or the watch department. So we go to the first door we see, and the sliding doors open up, right? And what do we walk into? Women's shoe department. Great. This is exactly what we're looking for, right? So we go walking in and like, oh, this sucks. Well, we got to go find our way around here. And some young lady comes jogging up to us and says, what? What'd she say, Noah?
Oh, are you?
Yeah. Leading right into, can I help you find anything?
Sure, yeah.
And what do you think we said, Jerry? Naturally, what's our response?
We're just looking, man.
No,
Right? No. We're like Power Rangers with our hands out, like, no, and we're just like, hey, no, thanks. We're just looking. And she just scurries away. Let me know if, she just scurries away. And we take like 5 more steps and we look at each other and we're like, well, that was smart. Could we have used her help?
Yes.
We're going to burn some extra calories now, right?
Yep.
I don't know where. It's not even in this store. It's just somewhere in the mall, but she probably could have pointed us in the right direction. Now think about that. Is there a more low pressure selling situation than some lady just walking up and asking you if you need help? This is low pressure, low risk. And I am a professional sales trainer at that point. And still, I fell apart in my emotional state and shooed her away so that I didn't get sold anything when I actually needed her help. Now, shame on me, right? But even more so on not so much her, but on her trainer. That's poor training to have her ask this question that the 4 of us know what the answer is going to be, right? And we're not in this department store business. But imagine if she had said, look, guys, excuse me for saying this if I'm wrong, but you don't look like you're looking for women's shoes. Why don't you just tell me what you are looking for, and I'll take you and drop you off. Don't worry about a thing, right? What would we have said? High five, Susan. Let's go, right? take us over. And what would she have the opportunity to do then?
Start building a relationship.
Yeah, man. Well, hey, those are some pretty nice work shoes. You got to notice your belt's a little tattered. Have you seen the belts we have? Yeah, come on over. Let's get you socks that match, because I pack my gym bag in the dark sometimes, and I just throw whatever in there, so you never know what's happening. So yeah, so if she had a little training, she could work right through that, but she didn't have much training, so she didn't. So that's my job. So we shoot her away. Well, we went and found it, and I don't know, spent some extra time and some extra steps, but we got back in the ride and we're driving home, and I'm like, we just start breaking that down. Like, what happened? Like, why did we do that? And what I figured was we needed to get that no out. And this was before I ever read Never Split the Difference, but that just kind of confirmed it and goes deep into the psychology of it. So on the first no, when the client says, love it, like you guys, why don't you give me the weekend to think about it? I train the team to say, hey, sounds great. This is a, it's a big decision to think about. I got a little bit more paperwork to do on the iPad here, and I'll get out of your hair. And then, so you've done a warm up already. If you haven't, and you're not cool with these people, you got no business presenting anything. So you've done your warm up, and maybe Cheryl talked about the fact that she has a daughter in dance, and you go, and she was excited when she talked about it, right? So you're typing away, and you say, so you told me your daughter's in dance. Is that like, do you guys travel for that, or what's that like? And you would let her talk about it for a couple minutes, right? And when she ends the conversation, now you ask the second time. And this is the time you're actually expecting either a yes or a real objection. So you would say, hey, I got to ask Cheryl. Again, I got this in the truck. I can have this done before you even know the water's off. You want me to just go ahead and throw it in for you today? And you get your smile and your little nod. And oftentimes, we just took people who don't ask people to buy ever to asking them to buy twice. The conversion rate, ticket average skyrockets just at this right here. And the challenge is people would use any excuse to just get out of this situation where someone pushed some options forward and they didn't know which way to go, right? But there was a large percentage of people who didn't buy who said the reason they didn't buy is because they didn't know how, they didn't know how long it would be. They didn't know what the process would look like, which is why in the question we say, I happen to have this in the truck, or, hey, we've got this at the warehouse. I can have someone drop it off, or this is something I'll have to order. I should have it Wednesday. I'll come put it, whatever it is. You tell them the exact process of what it's going to take to have it installed, what time they can expect you to be done. And all of that mutual mystification is right out the door. Now they completely understand what the process is, and they can make a real intelligent decision about whether they want that done, right? But you remove all that fogginess by saying things exactly this way. And then if they say no now, so back to it. They were telling you no, and you have no idea what percentage of them were just throwing an excuse out there to get you out of there because they were so confused about the process, right? So they would say, what are the big things they'll say? Need to think about it. That's too much. Going to get other estimates. Got to talk to somebody else. All these things. Nobody just wants to say, no, thank you. I'd like you to leave now. They don't say that. So what they do is just throw one of these things out that they know moves salespeople out. But I'm telling you, when you ask people to buy that way, or the second time that way, you remove so much doubt and mystification that the conversion rate soars. You just don't get these objections like you do right now. So conversion rates go up, ticket averages go up. Now, on that second question, that's where you might get an objection that you actually have to overcome.
Okay.
Any questions about that process so far?
Noah, does that answer your question, brother?
It does. That's so great. This is such good information.
Yeah. Did you write a book on that, Brian?
Yeah, it's in my phone notepad. No books yet, buddy, but it is coming. It'll be there.
So you gotta write a book. So let me go over to Cheryl.
I gotta learn how to spell first, buddy. It's gonna be rough.
That's what the editor is for.
Yeah.
So Cheryl, what would be a question you'd ask our friend Brian?
Well, I'm moving back to Brian out of this book and back to Brian. I was born in the early 50s into a contractor's home. Okay. So I've always been an advocate for the trades.
Nice.
What inspired you to take the direction into the trades other than you quit school?
There was no inspiration. It was like most people in the trades, I would say, unfortunately, a lack of options or family. I mean, that is, if we did a survey right now of 100 skilled tradespeople, probably 80 to 90% are going to have one of those two answers, right? Simply put, there are much easier professions to go into if you have options. Now, what we hope Waste No Day is doing is, as my wife likes to say, is making the trade sexy again. Is I don't know, making it more fun, kind of showing people that there's more to it than just me and my truck, or, I started in new construction, so me in this ditch pickaxe and frozen ground trying to get sewer lines laid. But I'm a third generation plumber, so I had uncles that were plumbers, and then next generation uncles that taught them plumbing. And when I dropped out of school, like, I knew where I was going. There was no need for this high school diploma, and it was a gang infested school in Detroit, so nothing good was going to come of another year and a half or whatever it was.
Okay. So Cheryl,
why do I stay in the trades though now is probably a more appropriate answer to your question. I love the trades. I'm a big fan of the fact that we in the trades actually build and fix things for a living. And it does feel like this country has somewhat gotten away from that, where it's just, I don't know. It feels like a lot of professions are built around just putting your hand in somebody else's pocket. And this is truly a trade, a profession where I do this. I've done this so many times in my career, which somebody did for me, pluck somebody out of nothing. I mean, we did an episode called From Homeless to Homeowner by 24, where a kid was sleeping in his car, and his wife worked at KFC, and she was sneaking him or bringing him food after work so he could have that one meal a day, because he literally had nothing and was just sleeping in the back seat of his Toyota Corolla. And I brought him in as a part runner, then an apprentice, and then put him in a truck. And at 24 years old, that girl became his wife. He bought his first home for his wife and daughter. I get to take people and do these things with them, or help them accomplish these things while they're learning to install water systems and wastewater systems, and take sewage and carbon monoxide out of people's homes, and safely install, natural gas and high voltage electricity, and give people cooler air in the desert, and remove humidity in the Midwest. Like, I love the trades. The fact that this is what young people are learning how to do, as opposed to, be some influencer or rapper or freaking all the other things there are to do that aren't really actually producing anything, is a big win for me. I wake up excited every day about it.
Yeah. So Brian, let me ask you a question. You've mentioned a lot of people. You've met a lot of interesting people, but I'm going to kind of focus down for a minute. Of all the people you've met, who's the most inspirational person you've ever met in your life?
Man, that's tough. In my life is a tough one, because I would say the most impactful person that I've ever had in my life is probably, outside of like my wife, is probably Brian Tracy, because for so long he was my coach, mentor, and in my passenger seat every single day with these, tapes that I'd flip over in my work truck. But in terms of like right now, and maybe ever from right now, I'd probably have to say Tommy Mello, man.
And why is that? What does Tommy do that inspires you so much?
So, Tommy well, so I'm sure you'll be able to back me up on this, although we haven't talked about it. He's this rare guy who's worth a literal fortune, who does not really care about money. He's a winner, and he wants to win. He's very competitive, but he's truly doing everything he does for other people. And I wish I could say that I'm inspired by him because I'm so much like that. Like, I actually have had to develop that part of me, to not do everything out of fear, I guess because of how I grew up, but to do things for other people, and for the sake of like the win being other people's success and coming up and getting their shot, and he does this naturally. I have never seen somebody more excited for the success of other people than Tommy. Now, he still wants to beat you, but he is very proud of your success, even as a competitor. He really doesn't have people that he hates. And I spend a lot of time with him, and I'm always waiting for him to start tearing down his competitor. And it doesn't happen. This guy really wants everybody to win. So he's somebody, despite the fact that he's 3 years younger than me, that I really look up to right now.
You know, I sent Tommy a text a couple weeks ago, because some years ago when I met him and we had conversations, and I said, Tommy, what's your goal in life? What do you want to do? And he told me, he said, I want to become the most influential person in home services. So I sent him a text the other day. I said, Tommy, you've accomplished your goal. I think you have honestly become the number one influence in the home services industry today. People are flocking to you. They're listening to you. They're reading your books. They're participating. And the answer he sent back, he said, yeah, but there's a lot still to be done. And I said, Tommy, I said back, my answer back to him, Tommy, the job will never be done. Keep going. May the force be with you, brother. So yeah, it is. And I understand where you're coming from, because, you know, it's he and Bree have both become very good friends of mine and Cheryl's. We saw them on the boat down in Miami a couple of weeks ago and spent some time. They came over, sought us out, had a good conversation. Asked Bree, what are you doing with that cast on your leg? And she told us the story about falling in the airport and all that.
Ugh.
So anyway, well, Brian, I want to give you my thanks for joining us today here on the Home Service Success Network that we run. And you know, you're going to be teaching a class at the Freedom Regional event in Oklahoma City in a couple of weeks. Did I hear you right?
No, this one's going to be virtual. I'm not doing a ton of traveling right now because I'm in my first year of GM of this shop here, and it requires a lot of attention. But this is just a virtual training for all the members of the Home Service Freedom Group.
Well, I've got a couple of clients that will be sitting in your class, okay? So
nice.
I'll keep up with you. But anyway, want to appreciate you joining us today. You've shared some good wisdom, some good in-depth, some good thoughts. So I appreciate you being here. And if you've listened to us, I hope this time's been of value to you. We are CVC Success Group. And if you're looking for somebody you need to talk to help you develop that strategy to move to where you want to go, reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. And with that, we'll see you next week on the next episode of the CVC Home Service Success Network. Appreciate you being here again. It's